Bonjour, hi Canada, I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm live inside the Beltway on Thursday, June the 9th, in the year of our Lord 2022. Good morning. I think there's only one story, the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh at his house by a man who traveled there from California, from Simi Valley, actually, where he went to high school. We don't know much about the individual. He was charged with attempted murder by the Federal Bureau of Investigation of a Supreme Court justice. It's an attempted assassination. And anyone who says it's a threat, it's not a threat. It was an attempted assassination. I'm glad the marshals were there. The man then retreated, figured out he'd been spotted. In my view, called the cops because he'd get off better if he said he was suicidal. He went there to kill Justice Kavanaugh. Now that's a threat to the justice, a threat to his wife, a threat to his children, a threat to the neighbors and to law enforcement. That same threat exists against all 9 members of the Supreme Court because of the leak. It was not only foreseeable that such an assassination attempt would happen, it was predicted. It was predicted repeatedly that this would happen. The United States Senate passed unanimously in the aftermath of the leaked opinion a measure to protect the justices. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Rules Chairman Jim McGovern, and every other Democrat is responsible for any gap in security that results for any of these justices. It would have been a Republic sundering event had it happened. And I would like your opinion on what's going on here. 1-800-520-1234. Why hasn't Speaker Pelosi moved this law? Should it move immediately? The second thing I'd like to hear from you on, should the court move immediately to issue a judgment in the Dobbs case, opinions to follow as recommended by Senator Cotton the day after the leak? And finally, is anyone surprised? I mean, I am not surprised. We have a donation of $330 million. Political extremists exist on the left and the right. They resort to violence. Bernie Sanders supporter tried to kill half the Congress. There are right-wing extremists. You'll see some of them tonight if you're one of the 3 people watching the committee hearing. It's not really a committee, it's a rump committee, and I'm not going to be watching it because the A's are playing the Indians, and I'll be watching that until I go to bed. But we talked about it last night on Special Report, and I'll play that for you in segment 3. Joe Biden, however, as I wait for calls to talk to Jacob, 1-800-520-1234. Why have House Democrats blocked security for Supreme Court justices? Why have House Democrats blocked security for Supreme Court justices? And what would have been the effect of a successful assassination attempt against Justice Kavanaugh or any member of the court? I believe it would have sundered the Republic. I think we'd be back to 1968 level, and I don't think we're there. I thought the riot on January 6th was awful, and it was an explosion of the far-right extreme in the United States. A handful. I don't think it's a conspiracy, and I think this is a silly show trial by a rump committee that's not legitimate tonight. But I do think January 6th was very serious. But attempting to kill a justice of the Supreme Court is about as bad as it gets. Attempting to kill a president is worse because there are 9 justices and there's only 1 president. And we have a history of political violence against presidents and candidates that is recent, that I remember, that people my age remember all too often. And not just political candidates like George Wallace, unsuccessful, but wounding. Robert Kennedy, successful and tragic. And Jack Kennedy, successful and tragic, but also Martin Luther King, and many other victims of political violence. We had a Wisconsin retired appeals court judge murdered over the weekend. There are 4,000 threats on the federal judiciary every year. 4 federal judges have been killed over the last 20 years. There are real threats, and the House has not moved on this bill. And I'd like to know, why do you think Nancy Pelosi has not done this bill? Why are Democrats risking this? Why are they doing that? It was unanimously passed. Do I have Mitch McConnell talking on the Senate floor yesterday? In here somewhere. What cut is that, Dwayne? I sent that to you. Leader McConnell spoke on the Senate floor, I guess. 4. Cut number 4. Let's listen to this. Cut number 4.
First, just moments ago, the Washington Post published an extremely disturbing report. According to the report, a man in his mid-20s was stopped near the house of a Supreme Court justice carrying a weapon and burglary tools. He reportedly told police he intended to murder the justice. Reportedly, he indicated he was angry at the decision he thinks the court may reach in an upcoming case in light of the unconscionable leak from a few weeks back. So this is where we are. This is where we are, Mr. President. If these reports are correct, an assassination attempt against a sitting justice or something close to it, this is exactly the kind of event that many feared that the terrible breach of the court's rules and norms could fuel. This is exactly the kind of event that many worried the unhinged, reckless, apocalyptic rhetoric from prominent figures toward the court, going back many months, and especially in recent weeks, could make more likely. This is exactly why the Senate passed legislation very shortly after the leak to enhance the police protection for justices and their families. This is common sense, non-controversial legislation that passed in this chamber unanimously. But House Democrats have spent weeks blocking the measure that passed here unanimously related to security for Supreme Court justices. The House's Democrats have refused to take it up. Now, look, Mr. President, that needs to change, and it needs to change right now. Right now. House Democrats must pass this bill, and they need to do it today. No more fiddling around with this. They need to pass it today. They need to stop their multi-week blockade against the Supreme Court security bill and pass it before the sun sets today. I'll have more to say on the subject as the facts continue to unfold.
Leader McConnell doesn't need to say anymore. That's perfect. I'll play for you the special report panel that Bret Baier hosted last night with Britt Hume and Mara Lyson and me after the second break. I do want to remind you of Chuck Schumer's statement in front of the Supreme Court in March of 2020, cut number 10.
Now we stand here today because behind me, inside the walls of this court, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments, as you know, for the first major abortion right cases since Justices Kavanaugh and Justices Gorsuch came to the bench. We know what's at stake. Over the last 3 years, women's reproductive rights have come under attack in a way we haven't seen in modern history. From Louisiana to Missouri to Texas, Republican legislatures are waging a war on women, all women. And they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
All right, that is a threat by the now Majority Leader of the Senate, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, on May 6th of this year on MSNBC with Nicole Wallace, said this, cut number 11.
Have to be have a clarity in what this draft decision means so that the final decision doesn't go that far. The Chief Justice has said this is authentic, but it is not final. I don't know if he used the word authentic. It's real, but not final. So, again, Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, nothing. And women just have to weigh in. I don't think there's a good outcome here, but I think there's a better outcome than what we have seen in the first draft, which is radical.
All right, the Speaker is not doing what Chuck Schumer did, but Jen Psaki, I'll play for you when we come back, did not discourage attempts to pressure the justices at their home, and the foreseeable and predicted consequence and attempted assassination is the story of the day. And the left will be afraid, the blue bubble media left will be afraid to talk about it because they know that Pelosi and Jim McGovern have sat on the bill to protect the justices unconscionably after egging on crowds to go to their homes for a month after a leak by a court clerk, I believe, a left-wing court clerk. What do you think? I'm Hugh Hewitt. Call me. Welcome back, America. On this Thursday morning, I'm talking with Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. I'm inside the Beltway. I believe the senator is back as well. Good morning, Senator Cotton.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be on with you.
Now, the morning after the leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion in Dobbs, you said on this show that the court ought to move to issue a judgment, opinions to follow, in order to minimize threats to the justices. They did not do that. First, your reaction to the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh, and then do you still believe, as I do, that they ought to issue a judgment, opinions to follow immediately?
Hugh, it was a truly shocking moment in American history when a Democratic hitman was narrowly deterred from murdering Justice Kavanaugh, and presumably his wife and daughters as well. This is someone who was probably aware of what Chuck Schumer had said just a couple years ago on the steps of the Supreme Court, Hugh, when he specifically threatened Brett Kavanaugh by name, saying that he had reaped a whirlwind and he wouldn't know what hit him. He was going to pay the price. This also happens after you've had left-wing street militias protesting outside of Justice Kavanaugh's home and other justices' home in direct and explicit violation of federal law. Yet the hapless partisan hack, Merrick Garland, refuses to enforce federal law. In fact, they did it again last night, Hugh, on the very same day that a Democratic hitman tried to murder Brett Kavanaugh. You had another left-wing street militia announce in advance on the internet that they were going to violate federal law. Yet not a single one was arrested. Merrick Garland should resign in disgrace. And if he won't resign in disgrace, he should be impeached in January for his dereliction of duty. And this is also at a time when Nancy Pelosi refuses to pass a bill or even have a vote on the bill that passed the Supreme Court or passed the Senate unanimously last month, Hugh, to provide enhanced security, not just for the justices, but for their families. Hugh, what would have happened if that Democratic hitman had shown up in 1 o'clock in the afternoon as opposed to 1 o'clock in the morning, when Justice Kavanaugh wasn't at home and therefore there were not police present at his home? It's disgraceful that Nancy Pelosi refuses to even have a vote on this Supreme Court security bill that passed unanimously last month. And then finally, the point you raised, Hugh, yes, I believe the Supreme Court needs to issue the opinion in the Dobbs case now. However they rule, whatever the breakdown of the justices' opinions are, they need to issue those opinions, or at least the judgment now, before some other lunatic Democratic hitman thinks that he can change the court's decision and the course of history by assassinating a Supreme Court justice.
Now, Tom Cotton, the fact that it was foreseeable, indeed beyond foreseeable, it was predicted that violence would be incentivized by that leak, means that the leaker is the proximate cause of the attempted murder, as he's been charged with the attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice under federal law last night. The FBI read the FBI affidavit. This is not a threat. It's an attempted murder. So the proximate cause was the leak. Ought the leaker to face civil liability for the intentional infliction of emotional distress on every one of these threatened people?
That seems to me a compelling case of civil liability for that leaker once his identity is known. Hugh, I'm not sure that he shouldn't face criminal liability. And while Merrick Garland's politicized Department of Justice may do that, I'm pretty confident the statute of limitations for such crimes runs well past the 2024 election. And if the FBI and the Department of Justice is not able to turn it up now because they're not focused on that, as opposed to, say, I don't know, persecuting parents at school boards as domestic terrorists, then I'm confident the next Republican administration will get to the bottom of it and hold those accountable who deserve to be held to account.
You know, Senator, I got to ask you about Peter Navarro. Now, Peter and I have been clashing for 25 years. All right. We are not buddies, though we have known each other for a long time. We've usually been yelling at each other when we've been together. And I mean that seriously. Nevertheless, the amount of resources necessary to arrest him and take him in leg irons to court is a disposition of Department of Justice assets, which clearly were needed elsewhere this week. Do you agree with that?
I agree with you. Putting aside whatever you think of Peter Navarro or Peter Navarro's politics or his views on trade policy or his service in the Trump administration, it's all beside the point. Peter Navarro was treated like a Mexican drug cartel leader when he's accused of defying a subpoena from an illegitimate House committee. Was Michael Sussman, the Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer who lied to the FBI to try to sic the FBI on the Trump campaign, arrested in handcuffs and in leg irons? I don't think he was. What about the other Democrats who are ever arrested for crimes? This is seems to me a clear example, once again, of the Garland Department of Justice targeting and persecuting its political opponents.
Now, hapless and feckless are good terms for the Attorney General. And I do agree with you. He's just clearly not up to the job. And I used to say that about Jeff Sessions. So when you're not up to the job, and I work for two fine Attorney Generals, Bill Smith and Ed Meese. They were both up to the job. Eric Holder was cited for contempt. He was never arrested. I've never heard of anyone being arrested for citation of a contempt for a legitimate committee, much less this rump committee that is illegitimate in everything that it does. It's just completely illegitimate because the majority denied the minority its traditional rights, first time in the history of the House. Are you going to even watch tonight? I was just talking to Bret Baier about coverage on Fox Business tonight, and they're going to cover it because I imagine there are 5 people in America who want to watch it. But are you going to watch it?
Am I going to watch the illegitimate partisan witch hunt on TV tonight, Hugh?
Yeah, that one.
No, the Yankton Twins have a game tonight, so I'll be tuning into that before I tune into the Red Sox and the Angels out west.
Senator, the A's are playing the Guardians tonight, who are now 25-25 and 1 game back of the Twins in the loss column. So I'd suggest your MLB is better spent there. Let's go back to the issuing of the opinion. There are 29 opinions left. The would-be assassin cited not only Dobbs, but the New York Gun Club case, which tells me he is a literate user of the internet, meaning that his internet social media history will be available and the timing of it will be available. Will the Judiciary Committee demand those records? Because it seems to me proximate cause is going to be proven up by which websites he got the geodata to target the justice and where he learned about the New York Gun Club case from. This is not a dummy. This is not an irrational mental case. This is a cold-blooded assassin.
Yeah, well, Hugh, I'm skeptical that Dick Durbin's Judiciary Committee will be doing so, but I'm pretty confident that Chuck Grassley's Judiciary Committee in January will do so. Again, this is a truly shocking moment in American history when a Democratic hitman tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice to influence the outcome of a case after a draft opinion in that case was leaked specifically to create the kinds of pressure and threats we have seen with left-wing street militias protesting in violation of federal law outside of justices' homes, and now a hitman traveling across the country with kidnapping materials and firearms arrested outside of the justice's home, confessing to his intent to kill them specifically because of that case.
Let me ask you, do you suspect he violated gun laws along the way?
I don't know enough about the facts of how he obtained his firearm or how he traveled with that firearm, Hugh. That's possible. It wouldn't surprise me. And it wouldn't surprise me that he's not charged with gun crimes because this Department of Justice refuses to charge serious and repeat felons with gun offenses at anything like the rate it should be because it undermines their own ideological goals of releasing as many people from prison as possible and not sending them to prison in the first place. But Hugh, the guy showed up in tactical gear with zip ties and flex cuffs and duct tape and a crowbar. He wasn't going there to do a construction project.
And a Glock.
He was going there to take hostage and assassinate a Supreme Court justice and presumably his wife and his daughters as well. And Chuck Schumer can't even acknowledge it when he was the one who went out to the Supreme Court steps and personally threatened Brett Kavanaugh by name. You know, the Democrats are always saying that, Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham are responsible for this or that crime because they think we have too much illegal immigration. Chuck Schumer specifically threatened Brett Kavanaugh by name. Yet, as far as I know, he hasn't even mentioned it. Where are the Democratic senators and congressmen who are denouncing this effort by a Democratic hitman to assassinate a Supreme Court justice? For that matter, where are the mainstream media? This story is probably on A27 in the New York Times.
It's astonishing. It's very hard to find.
Every morning newsletter buried it under their obsessive hyperventilating about this illegitimate partisan witch hunt hearing we're going to have tonight.
Now, but Senator, last question.
Imagine though, Hugh, imagine if it had been a conservative who was obsessed about an opinion by, say, Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was still alive and showed up at her home with a gun and all that equipment. Do you think that would be running an A27 of the New York Times? Or do you think it would be a 5-alarm fire on MSNBC and CNN and a better banner headline at the New York Times?
The attempt to assassinate any justice at any time is a banner headline on every platform. My last question, Senator. In terms of Jimmy Kimmel and the president, I don't know when that was taped. I believe it was taped after the assassination attempt. The assassination attempt did not come up, as far as I know. What does that tell you about that, quote, appearance by the president?
Well, Hugh, I'll confess that once again, I was watching Sox Angels, so I did not see Jimmy Kimmel, which is my ordinary viewing patterns at night, not to watch the evening comedy shows. But again, the fact that if it was taped after this was known, and this was known pretty early in the morning yesterday, Hugh.
10:20 a.m. Eastern.
It goes to show that the mainstream media and the cultural left in America is trying to bury a highly inconvenient story, which is a Democratic hitman tried to assassinate a Republican-appointed Supreme Court justice to change the outcome in a case that they don't like. This is just one more example of how the Democrats are projecting when they say that, Republicans and conservatives are undermining democracy or there's rising authoritarianism, when it's the Democrats who are willing to threaten justices by name, inspiring Democratic hitman to show up. There was a Democratic congressman just last week or earlier this week who said in congressional committee that they will eliminate the filibuster and they will pack the Supreme Court if that's what it takes to confiscate the firearms of law-abiding American citizens. These Democrats are true radicals. They are the ones that are threatening democratic principles in this country, and the American people are going to eject them from office this fall.
On that prediction, you're not going to get any odds from me because it's a mortal lock. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you. I appreciate your taking the time to spend with me this morning. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt here. Thank you for listening. Bret Baier hosts Special Report every night at 6 p.m. in the East. Tonight he is also going to be anchoring coverage for Fox News via the Fox Business Network and on Fox Nation of Nancy Pelosi's committee hearings on January 6th. Good morning, Bret. How are you?
Hey, Hugh. Good morning.
Before I talk about tonight and about last night's assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh, I want to talk about something you're doing Monday, which I applaud greatly. You're going up to the Kennedy Institute in Boston, not the Kennedy Institute of Politics. That's run by my college roommate, Mark Guerin, but the Senate, the Edward Kennedy Institute, to moderate a debate between Lindsey Graham and Bernie Sanders. And I'd pay cash money for that, Bret. Tell us about that.
It's a long time coming. A lot of organizations involved, including the Edward Kennedy Foundation, the Orrin Hatch Foundation, Senate Project, Bipartisan Policy Center, and it's an effort to bring back old school debate about substance and how the Senate used to work. And we were really interested when we were tossing around the ideas of the project, and we signed on for a series of 3 debates with various figures on both sides of the ideological spectrum, with the hopes that in a very civil way, they could debate the differences, but then get to possible places where they could see eye to eye. And that's really the goal of these series of debates around the country. And this is the first one in Boston between Lindsey Graham and Bernie Sanders. And you can't figure 2 characters that are more ideologically different, but also very good at articulating where they are.
Well, Lindsey is the funniest senator. I've said that for a long time, and Bernie certainly is going to be heard. Is there an agenda? Have you agreed on format? 5 minutes, 5 minutes? Is it Lincoln Douglas style? What's the actual layout?
Yeah, it is. It is much more formal. There's an opening statement, and I think it's actually 3 minutes opening statement, and then there's some back and forth. The topic is domestic policy. We're not going to go too far afield into foreign policy issues, but it's wide open. I mean, it's 30,000 feet, and then there's it's in the well of the Senate, if you will, in the Edward Kennedy Center. And then there's a sit-down portion where I do Q&A and they respond to each other. So it's an hour and not interrupted. It'll be streamed live on Fox Nation, and then we'll turn it around next weekend on Fox News Channel and do the same thing in the series of 3.
Do you expect to get to the package of measures that Senator Cornyn is leading the conversation for the Republicans on school safety, guns, et cetera?
I bet we will. In that, obviously, that covers domestic policy and one of the things that's front and center. And I think that there is that and other places where there will be common ground between the two, and that's what we're obviously striving for.
Now, let's turn to tonight, and then we'll finish with Justice Kavanaugh and the attempt on his life. Tonight, you will be anchoring Fox's coverage of Nancy Pelosi's committee. I hesitate to call it a select committee because the Republicans are not participating, although my friend Liz Cheney is a member of the select committee put together by Nancy Pelosi. How are you doing this tonight? If I watch it all, the A's are playing the Indians, the Guardians in Cleveland tonight, and it's the first chance for them to be above 500 this year, and they're only a game back in the loss column behind the Twins, so I kind of think I'm going to be watching the Guardians versus the A's, Brett. But how are you going to approach it?
Yeah, so we'll have some time before it starts. Martha and I will be on Fox Business Network, along with a series of guests, Jonathan Turley, Mark Short. We've got a balanced panel, Jessica Tarloff, others. We'll have kind of a setting the table. We'll take the hearing, and then when they take breaks, we'll jump in, and we'll provide analysis throughout. And then afterwards, Martha and I will be a part of Shannon Bream's 2-hour show, kind of recapping the hearing and the highlights and the lowlights from it. So, it just provides viewers an opportunity. On FNC, the opinion programs are going to keep going. They're going to dip in as warranted. But if someone wanted to watch, unobstructed, if you will, and have news analysis from us, we'll be on Fox Business. We'll stream on foxnews.com. It'll be on Fox Nation without a paywall, and obviously Fox Audio as well.
Now let me turn to the assassination attempt. You led your show with it last night, and I applaud that. And I was lucky to be on a panel with Britt Hume and Mara Liasson, who, if they're not the two most respected journalists in D.C., they're tied. And so I'm sitting there listening to you lead off, and it was very sober. It's such a sobering situation. I'm a little bit astonished by the landing pages of the major papers today, Bret Baier, because the story is there, but it's not the lead.
It's amazing, Hugh. It's just amazing. I always do this, and we always do this, but look through the prism. If this had been, some right-wing person standing outside Justice Kagan's house or Justin Sotomayor's house and being arrested and saying that they wanted to kill them, I just think, I don't think that the papers would be in the 15th slot or, CNN would have it at the 25th story. I just don't think so. And I think that that's a real problem for our news coverage. This is a big, big deal. And that's one of the things I led with Britt. I mean, this is a big story, right? I want to check myself because it is. And in this environment, we should take all of it seriously, left, right, center. But this is a real thing, a real guy with real weapons who is in real custody.
Yeah, with an affidavit from the FBI charging him with attempted murder. And so that's not a threat. That is an attempt to murder. And it would have been, I called it a Republic sundering event had it been successful, because it would change the makeup of the court and it would paralyze the court and it would incentivize other people to do it. And so I obviously the man is an extremist and a violent extremist. I'm not going to compare him to Senator Schumer. But the rhetoric of Senator Schumer was reckless. You played it last night, and I said it's the equal of any reckless statement I've ever heard. What changes? Do you think the House will pass that bill that the Senate passed unanimously now?
I do. I think it'll take, some cajoling of, back and forth, but I think they have to pass the basic premise that the protection for justices and their families. Believe it or not, there was some inside Democratic debate about not wanting to provide protection for Mrs. Thomas, and that's nuts. But there's internal communications about,
Wow.
And so it got down to that place in that as that bill was floating around, and then there were calls from Democratic clerks to the House saying they wanted protection too, and that's where Steny Hoyer drew the line, is that he wanted to add protection for clerks. And by doing that, the Senate said, no, we're not going to do that. We don't provide protection for our staff up here on Capitol Hill. And so the bill is lacking what the Supreme Court really wanted to begin with. But I do believe it passes pretty quickly after this.
Brett, counterfactuals are never easy, and I usually avoid them. But and I won't even say Justice Kavanaugh, had any of the conservative members of the court been assassinated in the last month, what would the consequence have been to the country?
I mean, hypotheticals are tough, Hugh, but that's a massive one, and I think it would throw things into chaos. I think. I mean, you talk about institutions and respecting institutions, and that process about the Supreme Court. I just think it's a massive thing to think about, and a horrible thing, and we have got to prevent it.
It is. I try to get my arms around it because I lived through 1968 to 70, and the last 2 years are kind of on that level of tenuousness. You're not old enough to remember that, but you woke up every day, and I remember waking up and Bobby Kennedy being killed, and every Catholic in America was just completely thunderstruck. And I can remember Kennedy being assassinated, barely, but it's just the kind of thing you don't imagine America. So I talked to Michael Oren this morning, who I'm sure you knew when he was ambassador from Israel, and he said when Rabin was assassinated, it shocked Israel too. And I just want to compliment you for doing that, and I hope that you're right about that. I will be watching you tonight. What time does the special coverage get started on Fox Business, Brett?
Just before 8, about 7:55. They expect to gavel in soon thereafter, but we'll have plenty of time to come and set the table, and then we'll see what they bring to the table. Hugh, this is a big moment for them to call for primetime hearings. The last time we had a primetime committee hearing, 2015, VA hearing. So they've got to bring whatever they've got.
We will be watching, if you are watching, Bret Baier on Fox Business tonight at 7:50 or so. Thank you, Brett. Don't go anywhere, America. Back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on a Thursday morning where I'm still sort of shocked that a man attempted to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh last night. Jim Talent, former senator in the United States Senate, joins me. He voted on a lot of judicial nominees. Jim Talent, how did you react when you heard that last night?
Same way you did. Thank God it didn't succeed, and not only because, we don't want anybody killed, we don't want a Supreme Court justice killed, but because of the potential for damage to judicial independence, which is a key part of a democracy. I mean, really, there's only two things that all democracies have. One of them is a respect for the value of human beings, which is the reason everybody's entitled to participate in their own government through elections, but the other is the rule of law, and the key to a rule of law is a robust, independent judiciary so that people can vindicate the rights they have against the state. And
Senator, why do you think the House has not acted on the bill that was passed unanimously by the Senate in the aftermath of the leak? Because it was foreseeable, indeed it was predicted. Leader McConnell said exactly 3 times in his floor speech yesterday. Why has that bill not even gotten to the floor? Jim McGovern's Rules Committee has not even marked it up.
I think they're in the middle, and you can't overestimate the impact of the failure of their policies and the resulting political crises that they're in. In other words, Americans are suffering enormously. There's going to be an electoral response, which they know. And they're suffering because of the policies, and deep down they know this. I'm talking about the leaders of the Congress, the Democrats. They know it's because of their policies, their monetary policies, their border policies, their crime policies, their pandemic policies. And I think in that atmosphere, responsible decision making is difficult. I mean, I've been in it to some degree in bad election cycles, but this is worse. Because not only do they not have the answer, I think deep down they know their policies are the problem.
You know, nobody expected 1994. I was doing live television that night, and I said, if anyone tells you that this was expected, they're lying. Chris Cox told me that too, former congressman. And in 2010, we kind of knew that the Democrats were going to get blowback. We didn't expect them to lose 63 seats. We knew that W was going to get smacked in 2006, and he did. But everybody knows that the Democrats are going to get blown out. But I do not understand something as responsible as protecting Supreme Court justices when this is foreseeable.
And I'm not going to sit here and say they don't want the court to be secure, but this is just, I mean, you're right. They should have done it a month ago. Now, I don't know the picture in terms of what security they have. I don't know all the rest of it. And also, it's not so much what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. It's nobody is pouring oil on the troubled waters, beginning with the president. I mean, he really needs to say something. And he's not. He's just been silent basically in the face of all this. So, yeah, I think it would be very helpful if he said something and if the House acted.
A lot of the media has described this as a threat. And I said on Bret's show last night, it's an assassination attempt. It's not a threat. It was a guy getting out of a taxi with a Glock at 1:15 in the morning who then turned himself in because he saw he'd been spotted. That is not a threat, Jim Talent. A threat is,
no, it's not. And going to work to the address that he learned because it was posted on the internet by people who are organizing protests in front of houses, which. Yeah, it is menacing, and I assume it's intended to be menacing. And it's not. I mean, it's along with the court packing plans that they've been pushing. It's a direct threat to one of the foundational pillars of the republic.
Yeah, I don't know if you're old enough. You aren't old enough to remember 1968 to 70, but this is like now number 3 on period of political instability from January 6th until today is really one of the most tumultuous periods of political instability in American history. And the way to end that is to pass bipartisan thing and to speak soothing words. I don't think the president on Jimmy Kimmel helped at all last night.
I'm about as old as you are, my friend, so I do remember. Oh, no. I mean, I just thought I know why he's doing this, because he thinks that when he goes out and speaks, he's putting a persuasive case to people, but every time he does it, and particularly, I mean, what Tom Cotton said, a month ago in the show is right, that he should not be speaking without a teleprompter, because I just think his best performance, he just comes across as, detached. In other words, is not really in touch with what's happening. I didn't think actually from the clips I've seen that he did that badly last night, but it didn't accomplish anything. He doesn't come across as somebody who knows what's wrong and is doing something about it.
Now, he came across as grandpa at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. He's not addled. He's just old. And
right.
It's not effective. He's not funny. He made no points. And Jimmy Kimmel had to rescue him 3 times.
That's exactly right. And if he'd ask him a hard question, you'd really have a clip to be playing.
I know, and he didn't. And so it's a safe space, but on the night of an attempted assassination of the justice, I didn't get it. Jim Talent, always a pleasure. Going to have Bret Baier on, Tom Cotton next hour. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on Thursday. Stay with us.